bodies. Huh? No, the water boat, Wajia Nini, and Southern Wasayiro, Coast Development Authorities, so many authorities. So the money, the little money that we have been put to a better place so that we can have a better output is actually divided to be stolen and for paying for wage bills, which is just unbelievable, so high. So I think with those few remarks, I want to applaud the President also, now that he has come back to his senses. That today I was hearing that there's 6 days dialoguing, where even the Raila was there and everybody was there. So I think what I want to tell is that I want to tell Kenyans, please, whatever you're going to do, as much as we are...
Afueni wapate afya yao irudi kamili na warudi kwenye shughuli zao. Mheshimiwa Spika, hii nchi yetu ina shida tatu. Na hizo shida tatu ndio inasababisha hii nchi kutotawalika ama kuwa na misukosuko. Shida ya kwanza, Mheshimiwa Spika, ni ukabila, ya pili ni ufisadi, ya tatu ni ukosefu wa usawa, inequality kwa kimombo. Hii nchi na hawa Gen Z ambao wamekuja, Mheshimiwa Spika, wamekuja kutuondoshea haya mambo matatu. Kutuonyesha kwamba ikiwa tutaendelea na haya mambo matatu basi hakuna pahala tutaenda. Wametuonyesha wao hawako na ufisadi wala hawana ukabila na hawanataka usawa. Na ikiwa sisi kama nchi tutafuata hii filosofia ya hawa Gen Z, basi bila shaka tutaleta mabadiliko katika nchi yetu na nchi itakuwa inaweza kutawalika. Mheshimiwa Spika, vijana hawa ni vijana wamesoma, ni vijana hawana balaa, ni wale vijana ambao walipata elimu ya bure, elimu ambayo ilikuwa ya maana maradufu wakati wa Kibaki akiwa na msaidizi wake Mheshimiwa Kalonzo. Kwa hivyo kitu tunachoomba ni hawa vijana wawe watachukuliwa kwa wasichukuliwe nguvu na mapolisi, bali ni vijana washirikiane na wao, polisi washirikiane na wao, na pia waachwe kufanya mambo yao, kwa sababu ni vijana wameonyesha umahiri na wameonyesha kwamba wana nia nzuri ya kubadilisha hii nchi. Hawana nia mbaya wala hawataki fujo. Na sijasema kwamba tuchukue filosofia yao kwa uharibifu wala kwa fujo. Filosofia ya kuondosha yale mambo matatu ambayo nimetangulia kuyataja. Mheshimiwa Spika, hawa vijana wametoka si kwa sababu ya finance bill, ni kwa sababu tofauti ambazo zinawakwaza katika maeneo yao wanayoishi. Sababu nyingi zinazowakwaza, Mheshimiwa, nikitaja chache. Kwanza ni kwa sababu ya ongezeko la school fees. Vijana utakuta wengi hawasomi, wamefukuzwa, wako majumbani wanarandaranda. Utakuta ongezeko la mambo ya university, pia umeme umeongezeka, mambo ya housing levy, ushuru umeongezeka maradufu. Utakuta hawa vijana mara nyingi hawana njia ya kujihami kwa vovote. Na vile vile pia ukiangalia vijana kama hawa utapata ya kwamba wanaangalia, ukisema ukosefu wa usawa, ni kwamba nitatoa mfano wa makazi. Utaenda ofisi ukute kazi kuanzia juu mpaka chini ni kabila moja ama mbili. Na Kenya tuko na makabila zaidi ya 40. Utakuta, Mheshimiwa, nitakupa mfano Bwana Spika, kule Lamu Port. Ile Lamu Port kuna vijana wetu 100 walichukuliwa miaka 4 iliyopita wakiwa ni kama macasuals. Na mpaka leo vijana hao ni vibarua, hawajawahi kuandikwa permanent. Na ni kwa sababu utakuta watu wanakuja nyuma, wako pale KPA wanachukuliwa, ati hii ni kwaya ya watu 100 wanakuja wanachukuliwa, wanaandikwa permanent and pensionable. Wale vijana wako pale miaka 4 bado wako vibarua. Ukosefu wa usawa kama huo unafanya vijana kuleta sintofahamu na taharuki. Mheshimiwa, ile poti kuhamishwa Mombasa pia, hiyo ni njia moja ambayo pia ilileta unyonge na udhaifu mkubwa Mombasa, kuonekana kwamba ni kama maonevu, kwa sababu ile ndio rasilimali ambayo iko pale Mombasa, lakini unakuta ilihamishwa ikapelekwa sehemu zingine, na watu Mombasa na vijana bado wanarandaranda, hakuna makazi. Nitakupeleka Mheshimiwa, ukienda Witu ni division. Ikifika saa 12 inawekwa curfew. Wa upande huo hapiti huku, wa huku hapiti huku. Kwa nini watu kama wale wawekewa curfew? Kwa sababu wanalindwa watu wengine fulani pale. Kwa hivyo mambo kama hayo ya ukosefu wa usawa ndio yanaleta hii shida ya hawa Gen Z wamekuja kuamka na wameona kwamba hii nchi ni lazima kuwe na usawa, kwa sababu sote ni Wakenya. Ufisadi, Mheshimiwa Spika. Ufisadi utakuta wanakuwa sacrifice ni wale small sheep. Anaenda kushikwa director, anaenda kushikwa manager, na waziri ako free. Director na manager wanachukua order kutoka kwa wakubwa wao, na wanaambiwa isipoenda hivyo basi wao ndio wataumia. Na wakishachukua zile order, maneno inabadilika, kukichafuka inakuwa wao ndio sacrificing God. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, huu ufisadi pia hata hapa bunge, wabunge wanaitwa kwa PG, wanaenda wanaambiwa lazima huu mswada mupitishe. Kwa nini mbunge akubali aseme mimi nimepewa milioni 2 kupitisha huu mswada? Kwa nini rais atoe milioni 2 akijua kama huo mswada ni mzuri, ahonge mbunge ili aupitishe? Kwa hivyo hiyo yote ni ufisadi kutoka juu mpaka chini. Huu ufisadi na tunataka kusema kwamba ikiwa ni Eacc pia, ukienda Eacc kupeleka kesi unaulizwa unamjua nani, ama huyu umemleta kwa hii kesi anamjua nani? Kwa sababu mimi mwenyewe niko na ushahidi. Wakati nilipokuwa chair wa Child Welfare Society of Kenya, nilipata hii organization iko na ufisadi wa hali ya juu. Nilipoenda kupeleka kesi Eacc pamoja na ushahidi, waliniuliza kwamba huyu mama ako connected na nani kabla hawajamgusa. Kwa hivyo haya mambo ya ufisadi yanaanzishwa huko juu yakiendelea chini. Si ati ni kitu ambacho kwamba ni ofisa ama ni mtu mdogo ameamua kujifanyia yale mambo, anapewa order. Hata hao wabunge wako hapo wakipitisha ile kitu, walipewa order na rais kwamba hii kitu ni lazima ipite, na wakahongwa. Kwa hivyo kama ni kusema ukweli, ni ukweli usemwe na mambo yajulikane wazi wazi. Mheshimiwa Rais, Mheshimiwa Spika, tunasema kwamba ufisadi ikiwa utaendelea, na ikiwa rais hatajaribu kung'ang'ana na ufisadi, manake ndio ufisadi mkubwa, basi tujue hakuna pahala tutaenda hii nchi. Kwa sababu wale ambao ni mafisadi sahihi, rais amejitokeza kimasomaso kuwalinda na kuwa protect. Kwa hivyo ina maana hajaamua kupigana na ufisadi kama rais wa nchi. Tunataka rais ajaribu, apambane, na kama hawezi atoe nafasi, wanaume wachukue hiyo nafasi, wafanye kazi. We need change in this country. Tunataka mabadiliko, na mabadiliko tumeletewa na vijana, na wasirudi nyuma. Tunawaunga mkono, tuko na wao. Tumesema kwamba hawa vijana waende hivyo hivyo, na wameonyesha umahiri na wameonyesha ungwana ya kwamba hawana haja ya mali ya mtu, hawana haja ya kuiba wala kuharibu. Wao wanataka haki yao, na haki ni lazima ipatikane. Mheshimiwa Spika, nikimalizia, mimi si mtu wa maneno mengi. Nataka kuambia vijana wachukue kura. Wachukue kura kwa wingi. Hiyo ndio silaha ya kupambana na adui. Asanteni sana. Nimeshukuru. Naunga mkono huu mswada. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika.
Asante. Sasa tunampata Senator Mbugua George.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity to contribute to this very important motion. Mr. Speaker, Allow me to appreciate your office and the majority and the minority leaders for giving us this opportunity so that we can speak on the status of our country. Allow me also, Mr. Speaker, to send my condolences to the people, both the Gen Zs and the police and the general public who perished during this time of these skirmishes. Mr. Speaker, the events surrounding the debate, the passing and the withdrawal of the finance bill were unprecedented. We've never had this issue, we've never seen our young people coming out in the numbers they came out. And Mr. Speaker, it marked a turning point in the governance of this country. Honorable Speaker, I would want to take this opportunity to thank the young people because they have woken up, they have made the leadership of this country to wake up and to decide to change the course this country was heading to. Honorable Speaker, the finance bill was just a trigger of the many things which have not gone well in this country. And the young people came out clearly telling us that they are not doing these things for themselves only, they were doing for their parents, their brothers and sisters, and those people probably who don't have the energy as they do to come out and speak the way they did. I thank them for that. Mr. Speaker, this country for many years has had to deal with the problem of inequalities. The gap between the poor and the rich have been widening to the extent that we've agreed that there are those people who are called wananchi and wanyainchi. And what the young people are telling us is that these things must change. Honorable Speaker, the Gen Z have said in very clear language that they don't want so many stories. They want action. And Honorable Speaker, I will attempt to bring 3 action points, which I think would help to alleviate the problems of the young people. Honorable Speaker, Article 54 and 55 of the Constitution addresses the issues of the young people of this country and also the issue of the people with disability in this country. And in the attempt to actualize these articles, Mr. Speaker, Parliament, in its own wisdom, enacted the Access to Government Procurement Act of 2015, whereby, as a law, it was decided that 30% of all government procurement will go to the marginalized groups, that is the youth, the women, and the persons with disability. But what has happened, Mr. Speaker, we all know, because we live in this country, that this law has never been actualized as it was intended. Honorable Speaker, just to give you an example, we operate a budget of about 3 trillion. And if we assume that 30% of that go to development, it means we have about 1 trillion which goes to the purchase of goods and services. And if this law was to be followed to the letter, about 300 billion would go to these marginalized groups. Honorable Speaker, our honorable colleague has talked about the Public Procurement Regulatory Authority. These are the people who are supposed to make sure that this act is adhered to. I think it is important as an action point, Mr. Speaker, that we call these people here and they tell us what is wrong, why have they not been able to actualize this so that the young people of this country, the people with disabilities, and the women benefit as the parliament of this country intended to. Also, as an action point, Mr. Speaker, because the young people have spoken and they have said they want to see action, I would urge the government and this House, because we just entered the new finance budget cycle, we must prioritize in the first quarter that the procurement which the government will engage in should go to the youth and the other marginalized groups. Honorable Speaker, when these young people were demonstrating and they were coming to Parliament, you could see the anger, the determination. And then I pondered and asked, what is this which have made these people very angry? And I thought, probably among this young generation, there are people among them who are educated by their parents, and their parents spent everything, probably even sold their land, because we've been told in this country since we were young that usome, utapata kazi mzuri, na utaishi maisha mazuri. And these young people went to school in the hope of getting jobs and helping their parents, but they were faced with helplessness. Mr. Speaker, Article 55 of our Constitution, as read together with the Persons with Disability Act of 2013, reserved 5% of employment in all government ministries and parastatus to persons with disability. And if I can read for you, Mr. Speaker, one article said that this was to be actualized progressively. 10 years down the line, Mr. Speaker, according to the status report, which was just released the other day on the status report on disability, this act has not been properly implemented. In the report, Mr. Speaker, we came to learn that over 240 government agencies in this country have never employed any single person with a disability, yet we have a law. And the excuse they give is the Constitution says it has to be implemented progressively. And because, Mr. Speaker, the youth have said that we need action, at some point, maybe these are a constitutional moment where we have to look at the weaknesses of some of the laws we have. And I think it's time we remove that term progressive so that we can be able to enforce this. In that said report, Mr. Speaker, out of the entire workforce of the Republic of Kenya, only 1.32% are persons with disability. So when you see some of these young people with a lot of anger, you imagine that their children whose parents were disabled and they thought they would help them, but it could never come to be. Mr. Speaker, I was very happy the other day when I heard His Excellency the President saying it is time that we wind up some of the parastatus which are performing the same function. In that note, Mr. Speaker, I want to bring to the attention of this House that when it comes to matters disability in this country, Parliament enacted the National Council for Persons with Disability Act 2003, which is a legally mandated body to handle matters to do with disability. Also in this country, Mr. Speaker, we have another fund called the National Fund for the Disabled of Kenya, which is registered as a the Trustees Perpetual Succession Act, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this body received government money over the last years, and over the last 20 years, and it has never been subjected to any parliamentary oversight. This institution, in spite of receiving hundreds of millions of shillings from the Exchequer, it has never been audited by the Auditor General. Mr. Speaker, when I raised a question on the floor of this House so that we can engage this body, it took a whole year before the trustees could agree to appear before the committee. And when they came, Mr. Speaker, and we asked them what they do, they act as an investment company, and all the money they have been receiving, they have bought buildings, and whatever goes to help the persons with disabilities is a mere 30%. Mr. Speaker, I want to bring to the attention of this House that among the other things which shocked us when the trustees of this fund appeared to us, they have put a whole Kenya shillings 780 million in a fixed account. This is taxpayers' money, which was meant to help the persons with disability. As an action point, Mr. Speaker, I would be calling on this House that we call these two institutions here and they address how they have been spending the money given to them. Mr. Speaker, I would be imploring on this House, Mr. Speaker, that we must insist that this money, which is taxpayers' money, put in fixed deposits, be immediately made available and distributed to the various disabled groups in this country. Honorable Speaker, Mahatma Gandhi once said that the true measure of any society can be found on how it treats its most vulnerable members. And these are the children, the elderly, and the persons with disability, Mr. Speaker. As the National Assembly attempts to amend the finance bill, Mr. Speaker, we would be requesting that they don't touch the cash transfers, which helps these vulnerable people in our society. On the issue of public debt, Honorable Speaker, the executive, through the President, has attempted to audit what Kenya owes to other countries. And Mr. Speaker, that issue put parliaments in a very awkward position. Because to an average Kenyan, what they know is before any debt is taken, Parliament is involved. Parliament should know which institution, which country is lending us money, how much they are lending us, at what interest, what is the repayment period. So when we reach a situation where, Mr. Speaker, it's like we don't know how much we owe, then the Kenyans are asking, what is the role of Parliament? This House, through the Parliamentary Service Commission, Mr. Speaker, have employed the best minds in the Republic. At a click of a button, Mr. Speaker, you would have expected that Parliament can come out and say, according to us, as the representatives of the people, this is the amount of money that the government of Kenya owes, and these are the people who have lent us money, but it should never be that we are where we are, that we don't know how much we owe. This one, Mr. Speaker, put the institution of Parliament into a very awkward position. Mr. Speaker, I also want to address the issue of deprecation of duties. When we devolved through our Constitution 2010, Mr. Speaker, and we created the counties, very, very many functions are duplicated. When you go to our counties, Mr. Speaker, you find an agriculture officer paid by the national government, another one by the county government. You'll find a children officer paid by the county government, another one by the national government. I think it is time, Mr. Speaker, that Senate take the lead and audit the 2020 Constitution and ask ourselves, is it really sustainable? What are the weaknesses that we've had over the last 12 years? Because honestly, Mr. Speaker, things are not working. The young people spoke very clearly. And as I repeat, and they said they want action. It is now upon us, the leaders of today, that we must sit down, and I'm happy that is what we are doing, and see what is it that we need to do differently so that we can change the course of this country. Mr. Speaker, even as we handle the issue of the Gen Z, for those of us who are aspiring to go into senior positions, we must be prepared that yes, the Gen Zs are there, but after them, the Generation Alpha are coming. These are even more knowledgeable because they were born when in the age of information. And it is a high time that we realize that in our public engagements, we must bring everything on the table there is nothing to hide, because this country, Mr. Speaker, belongs to all of us, and more so to our children. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I want to support this motion, and then thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Senator Manzo Daniel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to contribute on this very important motion. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the two leaders of the House for coming up with this motion and for summarizing it very well. Mr. Speaker, what happened on 25th of last month is unprecedented in this country. Young people go to demonstrate peacefully, Mr. Speaker, but the moment there are peaceful demonstrations and the police think that they should be dispersed, then under the Public Order Act and this regulation they are under, which are actually 20 years old, the last ones were done by former Attorney General Amos Wako, other consequent ministers did not. But even with those old regulations, and even with the Public Order Act and the Penal Code, there has to be a proclamation, loud and clear in a speaker, by escorting police of a level of an Inspector General, that the peaceful demonstrations have turned rioters, and therefore people must disperse. After 15 minutes, that proclamation order is supposed to be repeated. And then now, whoever doesn't disperse, Mr. Speaker, then action can be taken. What I expected the police to do is to just guard businesses and let the demonstrators do their thing, and I believe no one would have died. Unfortunately, we have lost 41 people, and quite a number of people are in hospitals. In Makueni, Mr. Speaker, we are burying 4 people. We buried one last Saturday, and another one is being buried today. There is a funeral on next Friday of a young man who was shot actually by an OCS. And on Saturday, there is another one. We have people who are still missing and are not known where they are. So my condolences to the families who have lost their dear ones, and also wishing quick recovery to those in hospital with all manner of injuries, from head injuries to bullet wounds, Mr. Speaker. I really want to say that although the president has promised to bury the deceased, up to now, we buried Rex last Friday in Machakos, a young man who was going to work. But because he happened to have been in Rastafaris and happened to have passed near the crowds, a police officer decided to shoot him. And after shooting him, when the young people cried that he could get help and should be taken to hospital, and even wanted to help them with their doctors, the policeman, who is very well known and has not been charged so far, Mr. Speaker, said, let the young man die. So they watched him bleed to death, yet he had just injuries at the leg, which would have been, salvaged. But therefore, so there is no compensation yet. There's no reprieve. There's no one who has been taken to court. And there's no one who has been sacked or any action taken against that particular. So I'm sure the JNCs are watching, and this is one of the issues they really want to deal with as time goes by. Mr. Speaker, the cause of this was the finance bill. And the finance bill, public participation took place. And I remember at KICC, Kenyans really pleaded with the state and with the parliament. But unfortunately, with the finance bill, in fact, a long time ago, during the days of Moi, the Minister for Finance, after reading budget, the next day you will hear price list given for beer and for this and that. That doesn't happen today exactly. But, Mr. Speaker, the finance bill is designed at Treasury with the experts, some from international organizations which fund us, then goes to Cabinet, then comes to the House goes to do public participation. So the input of the people, unfortunately, very little was adopted, and very little has been adopted over the years. The same bill now came to the House, and the usual lobby took place, and members of Parliament, majority voted yes, and irritated the young people because they did not imagine the hardships life will face. Mr. Speaker, I have engaged some of these people who are in these demonstrations. And most of them, Mr. Speaker, are graduates. They come from poor families. Even as graduates, they have tried to join the army. They have been asked for bribes. Police, the same. Any of KWS, And some of them, Mr. Speaker, some of the stories I've received from constituents from Makueni, they've even sold land to raise the bribe of 300,000. After you pay the bribe, you cannot see the people you pay the bribe, and your child is not taken either to the army, police, or forest, or KWS. And therefore, you end up with a very depressed young person with all the talents, surrounded by poverty, unable to fight poverty, and watching now the cost of living rising. And they have told me, Mr. Speaker, they rather die doing something. They rather die visiting us here. They rather die visiting the house of the hill. They rather die visiting the judiciary or those they think have let them down. And that's a very difficult position to correct. And quite a number, a majority of them, quite a number, have that idea that they rather die doing something than just commit suicide or do something else. So that level of depression, Mr. Speaker, has been compounded by when they saw the church support politics in an unfair manner. And also, they've seen the wasteful lifestyles of some of us in government, some of us who already are doing many things. And it's also very expensive to move government from one place to another, even when they are doing important things. A good one example is a recent visit to the US, Mr. Speaker. Really, some of the people went to the US, even if it was a paid-up trip by a benevolent person. I'm sure the governors had to spend their own monies for the days they stayed there, even some extended. There were very many idlers in that trip. And even one of the very frustrating things to many young people here is the issue of disability, which has been talked to by the wonderful senator. And I participated in the 1998 bombing where a lot of people became disabled. And we summoned the body dealing with disability here, Mr. Speaker. And the stories they gave were horrifying. We asked them why they're not accommodated, even these ones who were bombed. You know, truly, government has failed people in that regard. Most of these children were born, were either a year old or were born after. And the ones who were a year old or so, quite a number of them, including the driver of Mr. Kamodo, had a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. That 1-year-old of 1997, who is now a Gen Z, never saw the father ever be compensated, who woke up to go to work, but never came back, having been bombed and having died in the bomb. A lot of the people were just transiting. Every single county in this country was affected. And all these people have gone to court. People have been in hospital. They have been frustrated over the years. Yet, when this trip was done for the US, the people we sent from the committee, or the people we sent from this house and any other government person we engaged, in fact, we engaged the minister in charge of foreign affairs. The embassy in Washington was very frustrating on this particular matter when we went to Washington. And many other government departments have been. So what do you expect people who have relatives they have been taken care of and have seen poverty and suffering all the years and nobody listens? What do you expect them to do? So it goes on, and then all they can see is people, lifestyles which are extravagant on leaders, instead of every leader cutting costs and getting to help the people. When you come to this particular finance bill, although the Speaker for National Assembly has promised that it is going to be dealt with later, and although something very unusual has happened, the President, after lobbying for the passing of the bill, decided not to sign it, but sent it back to be deleted clause by clause. He really threw the members of National Assembly under the bus. It is like somebody who has vomited, be told to take back their vomit. We remained here as the Senate. They ran away. They don't want to come back, for there are no proper facilities to deal with the whole 2 houses right now. But today then, if you are to follow the, an act of parliament, and under Article 115, which has not yet been interpreted by the courts, and there was contestation from Honorable Otiende, who wanted it repealed instead of be deleted. Mr. Speaker, then that law, 14 days have lapsed, could become law today. What is happening is that by the fear of Gen Zs, no one can announce it has become law, no one can implement it. But I hope when Parliament comes to delete it, then at some point, the National Assembly must still come up with another finance bill. But the real legal act is to repeal is not to do any other thing. Mr. Speaker, so that others could also contribute, there is still high cost of living. The finance bill which was proposed did not help either. I have seen the Minister for Roads insisting on increasing fuel levies and try to do public participation, which is cosmetic. This will still increase the cost of living. Some of the things the Gen Z contested have now been enacted in the region, and we are part of the deals of the region. We have conventions in East Africa, and therefore some of these costs will still come up to us. When it comes to dealing with justice, you have heard of the role of ODPP. It has been very controversial. Eacc, fighting of corruption. We know the null prosecutions, which have been entered when there is sufficient evidence, and they are willing prosecutors to prosecute. But a political deal is arrived at, and something happens, and somebody who is known to have looted from the government, from the people's coffers, goes scot-free and goes on even to join politics and continue messing it up, Mr. Speaker. There has been seen impunity, incompetence in cabinet. We have the chief laws here. The regulations, luckily, have been annulled by this House because it has stood with the people, Mr. Speaker, and it is the next motion after this. We have seen extrajudicial abductions in Makueni. One has happened this weekend. A nominated councillor, MCA, was abducted on Saturday, taken around in circles, kept in Communicado. When we made noise yesterday, he was dropped in Makindu town, very sick. And the abductors were asking him about an incident where there was a problem at the funeral of an MCA with a local member of parliament who had voted yes, causing a scuffle in the funeral. And these people who tortured this MCA were asking him why he had brought problems, yet it is the MP himself who caused the problems and is the one who started attacks on the MCA. But that is extrajudicial. If you have committed an offense, you have to be arrested, statements written, and charged in 24 hours. And therefore, these abductions, some of the kids of Gen Z who have been abducted from the demonstrations, have been found dead, one in a quarry. We hope the others are safe, and if they are safe, the government should release them. The president promised that there are no people going to be found in River Yala. I hope after this incident, those who have been kidnapped will not be, found in River Yala. And we've had, the issue of, so that I may go faster, Mr. Speaker, let me conclude with the issue of pensions. When people retire in this country, Mr. Speaker, and these Gen Zs have their parents who have retired, their pension never comes easy. If it is a teacher, if it is a former President Uhuru Kenyatta, their money just disappears. And these people are tortured. They have reached 60. They are able to begin a business. They are waiting for their money, and their money has failed to come. Mr. Speaker, all these frustrating situations in the country must change. We hope IBC is going to be put into place quickly. We hope a lot of Gen Zs are now raising signatures for members of National Assembly who are incompetent from August this year. I am very sure most of them will be removed because of what they have been doing to the people, and quite a number of by-elections will ensue. So the Gen Z continue with the hashtag Ruto must go. Something must be done in this country, Mr. Speaker, to make sure that the Gen Zs are satisfied and all Kenyans are happy. We are a very hard-working nation. I thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Senator Karen Nyam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to start by giving my respects to the young souls who lost their lives during the recent protests that we witnessed as a country. And as a mother, it hurts to my stomach to lose our children in that manner. I want to send my condolences to the families of the ones who lost their loved ones. And I want to say it is not in vain. As a Senate, we are here reflecting and debating on the actions due to the contribution of your children. I also want to thank the CS of Health, CS Nakumicha, for waiving the hospital bills of those young people who got injured, and the President for committing to take up the funeral expenses and compensating the families, Mr. Speaker. It is also very concerning, the silence of the IG of Police, Mr. Koome. We are yet to get a comment from him on the happenings of this country in those 2 weeks that we witnessed unprecedented actions by our young people. Mr. Speaker, the country is experiencing a youth bulge. 75% of our population is people below the age of 35 years, Mr. Speaker. And that is not necessarily a bad thing, because it means that we have a large workforce that, if put into use, can give us great dividends of the economy, Mr. Speaker. And when the President, His Excellency William Samoei Ruto, took out of office, when he assumed office as the President of Kenya, we have seen deliberate efforts that are aimed at utilizing that youth bulge, Mr. Speaker. The Affordable Housing Project currently is employing between 140,000 youth to 200,000, Mr. Speaker. And you can see that he had thought about this large number of youth. Another program, Mr. Speaker, of the Finya computer, Utoe Dollar, that has been made fun of in this country. It is a program that, if utilized well by our young people and if taken up, can end up turning them into taxpayers, and they can make use of their skills. Because, Mr. Speaker, every year we are churning out between 600,000 and 700,000 young people from our universities, from our TVETs, from our high schools. They come and join the job market, and they don't find employment that is commensurate to their training and aspirations, Mr. Speaker. But another thing that the President has been doing, it is the export of labor. And I've also heard people criticizing this program, saying that we want to make it at home. We can make it at home, and we don't have to export labor to other countries, Mr. Speaker. I want to say that there are families in this country who are poverty-ridden, and all they survive on is sending a member of their family outside the country, Mr. Speaker. One of the leading countries, the Philippines, one of their biggest economy contribution that contributes to 12% of the GDP is a labor export, Mr. Speaker. And those efforts have been done by that country deliberately. And that is what the President has been trying to achieve. I want to challenge the youth. Now that we have affordable fertilizer, we have vast land, available land, agricultural land in the country, I want to challenge them to get involved in agribusiness. There is huge potential in agribusiness, and you can become self-employed, and you can be part of the nation building in that way. Here in Nairobi, our young people are usually used during the political process. We rely on them heavily for campaigns. They are a tool for creating hype for us candidates. But when you get into office, for example, your hands are tied because you want to help them, but the available opportunities are not that many. Mr. Speaker, if I opened for you my DM, my Instagram direct message now, the amount of messages, people requesting me or begging me to assist them get employment, Mr. Speaker. And I have observed this over time. And I have been wondering, I've been asking myself, how long can we sustain this kind of desperation among the youth? Mr. Speaker, we have an advantage of having a youth, a large youth that has energy, that has a lot of potential, it is largely educated, and it is time as a country we come up with ways for utilizing these young people, because when they are not gainfully employed, when they are not channeling their energy the right way, it is how we end up getting instability and even being exposed to political triggers that we saw last week, the last 2 weeks. Because, Mr. Speaker, even if the youth came to the streets, they were coming to the streets because of a lot of other reasons. Lack of employment for them and their mothers, and a myriad of reasons that took them to the streets. Because, truth be told, the finance bill had very little to do with it. And the misinformation that was also in the streets, in the youth that took to the streets, was noticeable, Mr. Speaker. Because I saw ladies carrying placards protesting the increase of taxes on sanitary products and or diapers, Mr. Speaker, which is not the truth. Who in their right senses can dare tax sanitary towels and diapers in Kenya, Mr. Speaker? The thing that the government wanted to achieve by introducing an eco-levy on imported sanitary towels and diapers from China, the substandard ones, the bad quality ones, is to have us be self-sufficient in that field, because, truth be told, there is a huge demand for pads and a huge demand for diapers. So if we start, and if we grow that industry, it will create jobs for our people, and it is these young people who took the streets are the ones who are going to benefit. Instead of that labor going to the Chinese youth, it will end up being the Kenyan labor that we are utilizing, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am on record before this House as tasking the Finance Committee to give me, or to give this House an audit on how many of our young people have benefited from the AGPO program. And I wanted to know, in our parastatals, in our county governments, how many youth people are getting tenders that rightfully belong to them, Mr. Speaker. And we have to interrogate these opportunities that are already available, that the youth that are not going to our young people and wrongfully going to the wrong hands, and we end up having the situation like the one we had. And on the finance bill, Mr. Speaker, I am one of those people who can swear by the President of this country, His Excellency, Dr. William Ruto. I believe that the intentions of the President were in the right place with that bill. I want to disagree with Senator Shakila, who claimed here that the President is a perpetrator of corruption. And it's only that this debate is uninterrupted, and that's why we did not raise a point of order. But nothing can be further from the truth, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the President's intentions are in the right place. In that same finance bill, tea packaging had been exempted from the 16% rate that previously attracted. Eco-levy was placed on every finished product that comes to this country, together with raw materials, potatoes, eggs, onions, and all that, Mr. Speaker. These are measures that we should all support, but we all agree that the information and the communication team of the president and of the government did not disseminate this information to the ground, because I am sure if that had been done, we would have gotten more support, and the people who took advantage of our young people politically to settle political scores or aspirations could not have found that kind of number that they got from our young people, Mr. Speaker. And speaking of misinformation, I am one of those people who bore the brunt of the misinformation about the finance bill, even on social media, Mr. Speaker. I have lost in my Instagram more than 10,000 followers because I was involved in a conversation on my comment section. A lady came to my page asking me, how can you as a woman support a bill that proposes to tax sanitary towels? And so I responded to try and explain to her that that is not the case, and locally manufactured sanitary towels were not going to attract the eco levy. And so she asked me, which local sanitary towels do you use, Karen? And I responded to her, I use tampons. Because, Mr. Speaker, I use tampons. And that was taken as arrogance, as how dare you, you see? But this is stemming from misinformation, Mr. Speaker. And I have earned myself a new name in this country as Shori for tampons, Mr. Speaker. You'll come across it on social media. They are calling me Demwa tampons, Shori wa tampons. They even told on me to the president when he was holding the X-Space, he was engaging the young people. They told him that some of the leaders under you are very arrogant. Senator Karen Nyamu is very, very arrogant, based on my statement saying that I use tampons. And Mr. Speaker, this is the first time, because of this finance bill supporting the government position, this is the first time in my life that I am being called arrogant, Mr. Speaker. Those who know me, those who have had the chance to interact with me, will speak of my humility, will speak of my person, my persona, my down-to-earth nature, and far from it. And far from it. And if I was misunderstood, because I certainly was, I want to say to the youth of Kenya, to the women of Kenya who got angry by my statement, that I don't withdraw because I use tampons, but I am sorry for angering you, and I am one of those fighters of the young generation. And I know they were very disappointed that I did not join in this what they were agitating for against the finance bill, but it is because I believe in the president, William Samoei Ruto. And it is up to me to convince you young people that our president has the best intentions for this country. It is not up to me to join you in your misinformation. It is up to me as an ambassador of this government to show you and to win you over and to tell you, be patient. The president is working. He has shown a lot of goodwill so far. He has appointed a task force to audit our public debt, which is one of the biggest reasons why we are here today, our public debt. The Finance Bill 2024 was tailored to remedy some of those things, especially the public debt, to balance that and development, Mr. Speaker. Another thing that my colleagues have also addressed is the issue of corruption. Mr. Speaker, the Eacc is letting the country down big time. Because since its inception, we are yet to see heads rolling, Mr. Speaker. We are yet to see the cases, corruption cases that they have prosecuted that have ended up having people serve jail term, or what people would love to see, Mr. Speaker. It should not be business as usual. If they cannot deliver to our people, the Eacc, let it be disbanded, and let us have another body that is going to deliver to the people of Kenya. The excuses that they give every other time will not fly anymore. And Mr. Speaker, I want to talk to the young people of Kenya, and I want to tell you to take voters' cards. Register as voters, all of you. The voice that we had, your voice that we had, it will be more powerful if it is heard through the ballot box, Mr. Speaker. And I want to assure you that in 2027, you will have no better candidate. You will agree with me that you will have no better candidate than His Excellency William Samoei Ruto. The other day he said, the measures he's taking now are akin to a cut, an examination cut. And in the fullness of time, in 5 years, he is going to sit for the exam. And on that time, when that time comes, I know you will all agree with me. So when that time comes for voters registration, I expect all of you who are in the streets to take voters' card. And with those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support.
Senator Anchesa.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, for also allowing me to make my contribution on the state of the nation. First, Mr. Speaker, let me just first start by conveying my condolences to the families that lost their loved ones in the current maandamano, and also wish a quick recovery to those ones who got injured. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, I would like to also thank the tribeless and courageous youths, the GNZs who went to the streets to speak on behalf of this nation, speak on behalf of the Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, I'd like also to confirm that I'm one of the few leaders who tweeted and asked the president to also listen to the voices of the youths, Mr. Speaker. Thirdly, I'd like also to thank His Excellency, the President William Ruto, for actually conceding and allowing the youth, some of the GNZs, to exercise their democratic right and also listened to them. Mr. Speaker, I can assure you, if you look at our neighboring countries, if you look at Uganda, if you look at Rwanda, they do not have the democratic right that we have here. So I'd like this to appreciate His Excellency William Samoei Ruto for listening to these youths, listening to their grievances, and conceding not to sign the finance bill and rather agreed to dialogue because of the protests that were there in the country. Also, I like also